She faced off with U.S. President Trump over his plan to put tariffs on Mexican goods.
Now, the call came hours after Sheinbaum rebuked Trump's plan to impose a 25% tariff on Mexican imports.
The U.S. imposed new charges on goods imported from Canada, Mexico and China.
Just imagine, the whole world is shaken by another round of economic warfare between two neighboring countries, the United States and Mexico. Not oil, not technology, but the humble tomato has become the center of a global political conflict. It may seem like just a vegetable, but it might be the final straw in the already strained relationship between the two powers. This episode once again proves how fragile international trade can be, especially when politics and national ambitions come into play. Why did it all start with tomatoes? The answer lies in years of disputes, negotiations, and most importantly, political games, where food becomes a weapon. In April 2025, Donald Trump, continuing his protectionist policy and relying on the support of the farming electorate, unexpectedly imposed a tariff of 21% on Mexican tomatoes. The justification was simple: to protect American farmers and eliminate unfair pricing advantages. But in politics, nothing is ever simple, especially when behind the apparent simplicity lies a carefully calculated strategic move. What's really behind this measure? According to American media, Trump's decision was the culmination of prolonged pressure from farmers in Florida and Arizona, who had long complained about cheap imported tomatoes from Mexico, allegedly subsidized by the Mexican government. They claimed that Mexican producers use government subsidies to lower production costs, dump prices, and bankrupt local growers. This narrative has long been a part of campaign rhetoric. Trump used it as a pretext for a drastic measure, securing the backing of agricultural states. Amid prolonged inflation, social instability, and the presidential race, this move is seen as a populist gesture aimed at pleasing the farming electorate and diverting attention from other crisis points. But Mexico did not stand idle. The response came immediately. Authorities announced the possible imposition of a 25% tariff on American beef imports. And this was a severe blow to one of the most sensitive sectors of the U.S. economy. Considering that more than 30% of Mexico's total meat demand is met through American imports, such a measure could cause massive disruption in the U.S. market and drive some American producers into bankruptcy. Moreover, it could lead to the collapse of logistical contracts and major supply chain disruptions. What does this mean in practice? The U.S. strikes at Mexico's agriculture, and Mexico retaliates by targeting America's meat industry. This is no longer just a dispute, it is a full-scale trade war, with tomatoes and beef becoming symbols of confrontation. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Mexican tomato exports totaled around $2 billion in 2024, with nearly half of all fresh tomatoes on the U.S. market coming from Mexico. Now, that entire supply chain is under threat. Suppliers are panicking, distributors are reconsidering contracts, and stockpiles are building up in warehouses in anticipation of rising prices. If the tariff is fully implemented, tomato prices on the U.S. market could rise by 10 to 15%. Given the high inflation and rising cost of living, this would be a painful blow to the wallets of everyday Americans. The impact would be especially severe on restaurants, fast food chains, and small businesses. Major retailers are already forecasting changes in pricing strategies. The irony is that those who vote for protectionist policies will be the ones facing their real consequences: rising prices and product shortages. Jokes are already circulating on social media. Hit our salsa, and we'll bite your burger dream. At the center of this unfolding drama is Claudia Sheinbaum. Her name is rapidly becoming a symbol of Mexico's new political direction. Tough, pragmatic, yet open to dialogue, she is not just reacting, she's shaping the agenda. In response to Trump's decision, she issued a sharp statement, emphasizing that an attack on Mexico's agriculture will be seen as a challenge to the entire nation. Posters and slogans began appearing in the streets of Mexico City. "You hit our salsa, we'll hit your burger." Her popularity is rising rapidly, and a new wave of public unity against U.S. interference is emerging across the country. As always, the financial markets didn't stay on the sidelines. Following the public exchange between Trump and Sheinbaum, the Mexican peso strengthened. Investors picked up on signals of potential de-escalation, leading to a short-term market rally. However, analysts warn that any further escalation could trigger a new wave of panic. Many funds have started hedging their positions, anticipating increased currency volatility. Some investment firms are already developing alternative scenarios in case the conflict expands. If Mexico does impose tariffs on American meat, the consequences will be immediate. A surplus of meat on the domestic U.S. market could lead to a sharp drop in prices, reduced farm income, and the closure of meat processing facilities. This would hit key states such as Texas, Nebraska, and Kansas, where cattle ranching is central to the economy. Behind closed doors, American producers are already discussing the need for compensation and government support. On the other hand, Washington's response could be just as aggressive, ranging from restrictions on avocados and corn to automobile parts. A spiral of mutual sanctions is beginning, where everyone loses: farmers, consumers, businesses, and even supply chains. Some analysts have dubbed this "tomato gate" and predict its consequences could last for decades, especially if trade relations aren't repaired in the coming months. It's important to remember that both countries are bound by the USMCA agreement, but even the existence of formal frameworks doesn't guarantee stability, especially when elections, approval ratings, and personal ambitions are at stake. Politics begins to dominate economics, and that is a troubling sign. Populism, lobbying pressure, and the fight for media influence are creating a volatile mix that could erupt into a full-blown trade disaster. Mexico, for its part, is determined to show that it is no longer the junior partner to the U.S., and tomatoes have become the symbol of that fight. Claudia Sheinbaum articulates her position clearly. We will not tolerate pressure, and we will defend our producers to the very end. These words are resonating with millions of Mexicans, particularly in rural areas. This is no longer just a trade response. It is a political declaration of independence. What are the prospects? Two scenarios appear most likely: either a temporary compromise with a delay in tariff implementation and the start of negotiations, or a further escalation in which each side plays to its domestic audience. If the conflict continues, both suppliers and consumers will suffer. It may also push Mexico to diversify its markets, for instance, by strengthening cooperation with the European Union or Asian countries. Negotiations are already underway regarding potential exports to Japan and South Korea. For now, farmers on both sides of the border are facing uncertainty. In Mexico, reductions in shipments, layoffs, and factory shutdowns are already being reported. In the United States, anxiety is growing among agricultural producers who don't know where to sell their surplus goods. Some cooperatives in Texas have reported potential losses in the millions of dollars. Without diplomatic intervention, the conflict could become protracted and evolve into a full-scale trade blockade. Thus, the tomato crisis is not just about trade. It's about politics, symbols, national pride, and real money. It is a challenge to globalization and a test for international alliances. Countries that once depended on each other now see one another as threats. Are we prepared to keep watching as everyday products become weapons of geopolitics? And how high is the price of political ambition when it's the ordinary consumer who pays it? Share your thoughts.